Obviously, a really good Rutgers team coming to town, deep and athletic, really well coached, and they've had a great season. Obviously, they're a top 25, top 30 team in all the metrics in the country. That's been clear and obvious really throughout the year. Have had some great wins. Everybody knows their home record. Obviously, out of conference, went over Seton Hall. So, really good team coming in here, and looking forward to the challenge here.
We just talked to Luther for the first time in a while. He's just talking about some of the things he's dealing with his shoulders, and you talked about on your radio show yesterday. Just what is it like trying to balance with him? He plays hard. He's going to probably have contact, but trying to balance his minutes and not putting him in positions where he's going to get hurt. What is that balance like with him right now?
Well, it's the same thing with he and Kyle. You know, you're just really trying to figure out, what they have to do to stay sharp and physically ready to play games. And at the same time, we're obviously really thin at a couple spots, so we need their availability. So it's a fine line you're walking really every day. I think you'd like it for it to be a little bit different, but that's the way it is right now, and those guys have managed that. I think some of the lack of practice time have probably impacted Kyle more than they have Luther.
And then with Luther's sort of overall game, I know he kind of sparked you in the second half. He had get a steal and a couple of buckets, and maybe the shot hasn't been where he'd like it to be this year. He talked about not suffering from any lack of confidence, but how have you seen him sort of battle his way through some of that and try to give you some more at the offensive end?
Yeah, he's just got to keep working, keep plugging along, and I think he's got to take good ones. He's got to understand who he is as a player, which is always defensive-minded, aggressive player first. But I thought he had some good moments the other day, kind of one of the few bright spots.
I've asked you quite a bit about the three-point shooting against you guys lately. I was just looking at some of the numbers in regards to that, and in your Big Ten games, opponents shoot 20 percentage points higher from three when Caleb is off the floor. And I'm just wondering how a big man like that, could be so important to your three-point defense. I know you talk about how important he is, the structure of things and just on that end of the floor. What does he do that helps you guys defend the three-point?
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe some of that is, your offensive efficiency's better, so they're getting less transition threes. Some of it could be your defensive rebounding's better, so they're getting less kick-out threes. I don't know how much of that would be connected to half-court defense or potentially some ball screen situations where he just provides better length and size. That would be my guess.
And then offensively for him, his 2-point percentage is down it's the worst of his career, I believe. How much do you see him being impacted just maybe by some spacing issues when he's down there? Because I think you don't have to guard Kyle really outside the paint, and you have a couple guards who aren't shooting the three that well. Is he dealing with a lot of traffic right now, and is that impacting him?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think he's had some spacing stuff for sure that has impacted his efficiency, and then he would probably be the first one to admit where he's got to finish through contact better. I think it's a combination of both.
Did you think you were past an effort like Sunday or a result like Sunday? I don't mean to minimize the Kohl Center. It's kind of a Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, you always wish you'd kind of perform better and compete at a much higher level. I don't know that you ever feel like you're past anything. Michigan State went in there the week earlier and was down by 20. They fought back better than we did, but I don't know that you ever think you're past anything.
But you'd won 3 in a row. You'd had some time to adjust without DJ. You were a game away from 500.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just seemed like you were fine at 15-15, and then Caleb went out, and that's something you'd handled pretty well this year when he's off the floor. And Sunday didn't work out that way.
It didn't. No, it didn't. It definitely affected us offensively and defensively. Him being out affected us for sure, and it definitely affected us more so than it had in prior games, which is why I was more willing to keep him on the bench. Obviously, hindsight, you'd wish you'd get him in earlier.
when things were rolling earlier in the season, you would consistently say you need to see 10 to 12 games against high-level opponents before you can start drawing some conclusions. And I wonder, as you're 12 games into the Big Ten, we've talked a lot about very specific things, but broadly, where this team sits from statistics and record, I mean, where do you think you are as now that you have sort of that base of you played a lot of games against high-level teams?
I think we're a team that's still, still growing and still going through, frustrations, and yet also some really good moments, some really, really positive moments. I think we have guys that are, going through the normal stuff you go through in a long season, where you're playing really confident and then you kind of stub your toe and go through some things. So I think it's the whole gamut. I wouldn't want to make any significant judgments right now. There's obviously still a lot of games to be played. I think the bottom line in this league is, they just keep coming. The talent, the coaching, the quality teams just keep coming, home and road, and you have to be able to adjust. And you have to be prepared for that. And you have to also be able to adjust to different styles and different schemes you're facing night in, night out. Now, I don't think, that was probably the most disappointing thing collectively with us the other day, and I take responsibility for it. I just don't think we responded to the adversity of the game very well.
And with the youth that you have, we've talked throughout the season about how this is a team that could progress as the year went on, because guys were going to get their feet wet and we're going to have to take on more things and grow. Do you still feel that way about this team? And is that different than in previous years, where you had maybe, 2 years ago you had an older team, and it seemed like we got this part of the season maybe you were trying to hang on or maintain, whereas I feel like now maybe you have more room for growth? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. Potentially, I think so. Obviously, when you have a young player like DJ, who's your third leading scorer, when you say those things, you're thinking about him along with some of our other guys, and seeing his progression, which we clearly saw in the prior 2 weeks. So I think that's. But I think EJ's taken really good strides at times, and our sophomores have had good moments.
When you went back and looked at the minutes after Caleb goes out with the fouls, I think it was 15-15, they go on the run, they're making shots, and you guys are struggling. What was the biggest difference not having Caleb on the floor? And I know that's not the only time you guys have struggled without him on the floor, but that seemed to be the most dramatic, maybe. What did you see from a coaching perspective that it changed so dramatically?
I just think we had errors offensively and defensively, and we missed a wide open corner three, but we had some errors offensively and defensively. Some scramble situations we didn't cover very well. An offensive rebound that they ended up getting a three on a scramble situation. So it was really on both ends. It was a combination of both ends.
And are these? It sounds like the answer will be yes, but these are things that, if this happens again, are fixable if Caleb has to go to the bench for whatever reason. It's not. When you say errors, that sounds like it's correctable. Correct?
Yeah, I think. Sure. I think he gives us something that no one else does in terms of an ability to get fouled and teams game planning and scheming for him, which opens up things for other people. So, that's clear. But there were some correctable errors that we have to do a better job coaching and playing for sure.
Chris, Steve's teams have always played really hard, I think, since he got there at Rutgers. It's kind of their calling card. But what have you seen from them that's allowed them to take this step forward they have this year?
Most of their group from last year's back. I think a lot of their rotation players. So there's some consistency in year 4 with his program, to where you have the kind of guys that he's wanted to recruit: big, long, really good athletes, and then he's always done a great job coaching them. And I think the consistency of their roster has helped in a lot of ways. I think they lost the one kid to transfer, but outside of that, really everybody's back. And they've still got some youth, but they've got some youth combined with some experience.
Coach, you clearly had the stretch where you lost 6 out of 7, and we saw it coming in here, and it's hard to be in a good mood when you're losing like that. Is this the complete opposite, even though you were not happy with the effort and that performance, but just one loss out of the last 4 now is totally a different story.
Well, I think we're all disappointed with the other day. I think you got to quickly kind of put it behind you, learn from it, and quickly put it behind you. It can't stay with you as a player. You got to make the corrections, but it can't stay with you as players and as coaches. I think that's really, really important to move quickly. We tried to do that yesterday with practice, get out and do some things that were high energy, that we felt like were important in terms of turning the page after we did the film cleanup. I just think that is how resilient you are really in this league defines you in a lot of ways, and it says a lot about you as a group. It just says a lot about you. How resilient can you be and respond to a difficult individual performance or collectively a different performance? And that's what we have to see. And so much of that is determined by the leadership within your group. How do your leaders respond, and how do they challenge the rest of the group to respond? It's on our leaders, it's on myself to get our guys back performing.
One more about Rutgers, and maybe you've seen this or seen examples, whether you're in the Big East or here in the Big Ten, to have a program that's just been almost historically down, like Rutgers. Maybe you've seen it with Chris Collins at Northwestern and what he took over, and maybe Pat at Penn State, but can you put your finger on what is it that pulls somebody out of the cellar like that? Is it more coaching? Is it more players, recruiting?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything. They've done a really good job recruiting, and keep in mind there's consistency there. I think it's a credit to, you look at the Penn State situation, and it's a real credit to their administration that they saw what they had with Pat, even though it was whatever it was, 8 years where they didn't make a tournament, but they saw what they had with him. So you have a consistency of roster over a number of years, and you have a guy like Stevens who decides, hey, even though I could go to the NBA, I'm going to return for my senior year. And I think you see this something similar with Rutgers, where a consistency of rosters, gradual improvement from one year to the next. I think we saw last year that they were more than capable of winning a lot of games in the league, and they did that. And they got, they had most of their roster returning.
When you're evaluating guys out of a game, and you have the first half like you did, and you have a second half like you did, where you're chasing it for the whole second half, do you evaluate those halves any differently when you're breaking down how a guy is playing?
The halves differently?
Yeah, like in the first half, it was you had the lead for a while. It was tight until the end. In the second half, it was a 20-point deficit for part of it. So when you're looking at how guys are playing, it seems like they're not dealing with the same stress level or the same.
Yeah,
do
it's different.
you have to evaluate players differently in a game like that?
Yeah, the ebb and flow, the momentum of the game. You do evaluate. It doesn't minimize what they've done, but you do evaluate it differently based on the overall stress or demands of the game.
So then when you talk about EJ, obviously you had a tough first half, and you put up some numbers in the second half and gave you a few things. How do you break down a game like that with him?
I thought he was in a really good groove, playing harder and playing more physical and playing with multiple efforts going into that game. I didn't think he had the kind of first half that continued in that vein, but I thought in the second half he responded well. That's a step for a freshman.
Going off that question on Rutgers and the talent that you brought up in this league, I wonder how much do you say it's consistency on our end, or is it a testament to how good this league is when you have 10 to 11 teams that are projected to make the NCAA tournament?
Oh, I think it's a great testament to the quality of the league. A great testament, and you've seen very little turnover in coaches. One last year, and then before that, I guess maybe our year there were 3, but very little turnover. So a lot of consistencies in rosters. Listen, they're a top 25 program in the country by almost every metric. There's no question that they're an elite team. As is Purdue on Saturday when you look at all their metrics. And I'm saying top 25, top 30 in most of the metrics. So It's a great credit to them. It's a great credit to our league. It's the deepest league I've ever been a part of. I said last year it was the deepest league I'd ever been a part of, and I think this one is deeper by a significant margin. It's the best league I've ever been a part of in terms of depth.
How do you think it keeps getting better then from year to year?
Consistency, I think consistency of rosters, consistency, really quality coaching, consistency of rosters is the biggest thing. You see ebbs and flows when there's a lot of turnover in programs.
I want to ask you about your defense. What was it, 70 points Wisconsin scored, and they've been really good at home, scoring maybe a little better than they show on the road. Just, I don't know, you guys have gone through a stretch like 10 games in a row where nobody got to 70 points, and then a team does, and it's like a crazy moment, I guess. What's your thought about, do you overreact to seeing that one game, or do you continue in the back of your mind saying, we're going to play great defense every time out?
Yeah, I think our defense is needed to continue to improve. Again, I always evaluate it on the efficiency, not necessarily on the point total, on what is our efficiency. And I'd love to be able to finish in, the top half of defensive efficiency. We got a little ways to go with that. So I think we can make strides there. I think we've been good at times and in stretches, but it takes elite level effort and attention to detail in this league to be consistently good, and that's where we got to grow.
I'm curious, you always talk about the very next thing is the most important thing. That's practice coming up here,
Yeah.
half hour, whatever. But this week you have two pretty good teams, Rutgers and Purdue, coming in here. It's been a league where you have to win your games at home. Just, I don't know, in a general thought, what does this week represent for you guys in your overall quest, and how important is it that you go out and play two of your better games, the next two games here at home?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, what you said earlier, and forgive me for being too simplistic, but you really just try to stay in the moment and stick with today. That's the most important thing today, is how do we prepare our guys the best today? How do we prepare our guys the best to stay in the moment? When we're talking to our guys in the midst of the game, we constantly are talking about make the next right play. You got to make the next right play, whatever that is demanded of you. To get too much outside of that can put too much on any of us. We got to figure out how to be in the moment, enjoy the process of playing games that are fun and challenging. Make the next right play, and whatever happens, Steve.
If you get into a situation where you have to fill minutes with Caleb out again,
Yeah.
is Diallo an option?
Um,
With Purdue at the end of the week with Harm's size.
Yeah, he's got to continue to get better. He's always an option. I think we saw him maybe in the Minnesota game. He's always, and he's getting better in practice. I'm not, he needs to stay ready. I'm not saying we will use him or won't use him, but he needs to stay ready.
This is granted not great consolation, but I wonder, when you're not performing the way you want your team to, you can internalize it and magnify your problems. Is there any comfort at all? Do you have to check yourself at times, or someone on your staff's job to check you on the fact that Penn State lost by 30 here, they beat you by 10 there. Iowa got run at Purdue. Michigan State's lost 3 in a row. Everybody's got problems. Is there like a strength in other people's misery?
Yeah, and it's not just our league, but I think absolutely there's a perspective required. Doesn't really make it feel any better, to be honest with you. It doesn't give you any more sleep, but there is a perspective required that I think you have to take, and your team has to understand. And again, we've got to prepare as well as we can today, own today, maximize the best we can do with today, get ready tomorrow, and we're playing a great team, and let's go. All right.